Welcome. What's up, guys? Oh, like a glitch there or something. Interesting. Oh, 1 second. Hang on. There we go. That mic in. Okay, perfect. How's it going, guys? Good. Today has been a wild day. I've kind of been in a groggy mood today because I got in at like 5 in the morning from driving from Reno. Last night and this morning, so I slept until like noon, and it's been a kind of day today, but I am very glad to be here. So kind of last episode I was in the car, what we talked about, this idea of direct, indirect, and no control, right? And so again, I want to start off these episodes from here on out with a story of my own life and how I applied the previous day's episodes content. So, with the drive back from Reno, something that was in my direct control was the substances that I put into my body in order to stay awake. So yeah, like we stopped by some gas stations to grab some like energy drinks or caffeine drinks or like snacks, right? And so something that was in my direct control was the snacks or the drinks that I put into my body in order to like stay awake or to stay alert and focused while you're driving. An indirect thing that I could influence but wasn't necessarily in my direct control was I could have influenced Sam, the person I was driving with, to drive faster. I could have told her to put the pedal to the metal, and use different methods of human influence and persuasion in order to get her to drive faster or slower, depending on what my goal is. And a no control situation would have been like the distance from Reno to American Fork, where I live. It's like that is a specific distance and I can't change it. And so like we have to travel that amount of distance, and I just have to learn to like accept that. I can't make that distance shorter, I can't make it longer, but I have to travel that distance. So that's an example of a direct, indirect, and no control from my day. So moving on, we're going to expanding the circle of influence. There's some really cool stories in here. So what's really cool about this is Stephen Covey says that it's very inspiring to realize that in choosing our response to circumstance, we powerfully affect our circumstance. So essentially, like what that means is by choosing to respond to what happens to us, we can actually influence what happens to us. Kind of cool idea. Like, for example, if my brother starts punching me in the face, I know I keep using this example, but let's say that my brother starts punching me in the face, right? Well, I can choose to respond in a loving, kind manner, where I give him a hug instead. And if I give him a hug, he probably won't punch me anymore. But if I punch him back, then he'll start punching me more, right? And so by choosing to respond to what happens to me, I have now, in effect, changed what happens to me. Pretty cool idea. So like we change the nature of the results. So it kind of illustrates the whole idea of working within the circle of influence. There's a story I want to tell. So Stephen Covey was working with the CEO of a company who was very like talented, capable, brilliant, like guided, creative. He like pretty much knew how to do his job very, very, very well. But he had a dictatorial style of like government or management, where he would just tell people what to do. Go for this, do that. Wouldn't ask for their opinion, wouldn't ask for their judgment, wouldn't ask for like their ideas or help. He would just tell people what to do the whole time. And obviously people didn't like that. Like they didn't like being told what to do 24/7. And so he like would alienate himself from the company and from like his executives and his board. But what also happened was all these like executives and board members were very reactive to this situation. Or in effect, they absolved themselves of responsibility in the name of the president's weakness. So was it bad that the president was doing that? Yeah, it was. But what happened was these executives did not take responsibility. They kept complaining to each other, feeling victimized and blaming this president for their results, right? And then he goes into saying, but like one executive was very proactive. So he was driven by values, not feelings. He took the initiative. So he like read into this president's concerns. He was able to decipher what he would need. So essentially this manager would like read into his deepest concerns, then gather data on those concerns, analyze it, and then give recommendations based on that analysis, which was based off of the data that he had collected in regards to the president's deepest concern and underlying concerns. And as he would present this information to the CEO, he was like, wow, this guy is amazing. Like, he takes care of everything. Like, I don't have to worry about him anymore. And then in the rest of the board meetings, he would tell everyone to go for this, do that, to do this, right? Kind of this gopher mentality. But to this one executive, he would ask him, oh, like, what's your opinion? Like, what do you think? And it's interesting how like he had expanded his circle of influence to where now the CEO of the company was asking him for his thoughts, his feedback, his ideas, his opinions, right? And then that same man got like negative looks from all the other executives because it caused quite a stir. And then he also worked within his circle of influence towards them as well until eventually he gained the favor of all of them. And like nothing happened in that company except it went through that man. And so like he had to like really like the company had to go through him always. And so he had expanded his circle of influence so big to where it didn't matter anymore. Like he just felt amazing because his circle of influence had grown so much because he'd worked on himself. He'd worked within his circle of influence and not in his circle of concern. Something that I really like too about what he says in here is he says that a proactive person working within their circle of influence will work to compensate for the weaknesses of others, not criticize them. Let me repeat that. A proactive person does not criticize another person's weaknesses. He or she compensates for them, which is exactly what this executive did. He compensated for the weaknesses of another person. Now I'm like, as I'm reading this, I'm seeing a lot of like potential in that. Like, if you're a kid and you understand that, or like realize or see that your mom or dad like lacks in a certain area, like you can pick up after them. You can like take care of that, which also is really interesting because it creates this like idea of love instead of judgment. If you have this paradigm of trying to compensate for someone's weaknesses, you like truly love them and you care about them. You turn to them with this spirit of compassion and love and service, rather than a spirit of like negativity and blame and judgment, right? If you would criticize their weaknesses. And that's like a really cool concept to me. And I'm like excited to apply that, to be able to compensate for someone else's weaknesses instead of criticize those. Because that ultimately allows me to take responsibility and not to be a victim, which gives me a ton of peace and confidence that like, yeah, I can do that. I can compensate for other people's weaknesses. That's like a really cool story. So speaking of that, I was doing my personal study today, and you know, as I've been talking about the circle of influence and circle of concern and how to work within each of them, this like idea came to 1 second.
Here's what I found.
Okay, sorry about that. So essentially what happened was I was reading in this talk by Elder Corbridge. I think Stephen Corbridge is his name. It's called Stand Forever. Really good talk. But it hit me that, like, so I truly believe in the Holy Ghost, and in the Spirit, and in Jesus Christ and God the Eternal Father. That's just my beliefs. And I had this thought, like, if I want to have the Spirit with me, I shouldn't pray to have the Spirit, but I should pray to be worthy of the Spirit, to be Spirit worthy. Same thing, like I shouldn't pray for trust, but I should pray to be trustworthy. Kind of cool idea there. And like that is the essence of working within a circle of influence, is focusing on like what I can do in order to be be someone, be that character who is worthy of receiving the Lord's Spirit, instead of just like asking for it and trying to get it or have it. Like, what can I give of myself in return for that reward or idea or spirit, right? Kind of a cool thing there. So essentially, like, yeah, it's just like really cool to be able to think about that. Okay, so this last part talks about Gandhi. This is a really cool idea too of how a lot of Gandhi's peers who were kind of in the government of India, were like the people who were accusing Gandhi were in like the legislature buildings criticizing the British Empire for like enslaving or subjugating the Indian people. And so while they were in there like criticizing the British Empire, Gandhi was out in the rice fields, in the rice paddies, like slowly building up his following, slowly talking to the farmers, getting their feedback, building those relationships of trust, and expanding his circle of influence, gaining that support and confidence throughout the entire country, to where although he didn't hold any like official office or title or prestige, like through that compassion and courage, like fasting, through that like persuasion and building of like meaningful relationships with people, he eventually like brought England to its knees and essentially like broke that bond of captivity that Indian people were in. And so there are like lots of ways for us to work within our circle of influence and to expand that. But we just have to know like the difference between our circle of influence and our circle of concern. And I think a really good way of knowing that is thinking like, what am I giving in return for this thing, right? Like, not just asking for love. It's like, what am I giving for that love? How am I a loving person? Like, who actually am I, right? I hope that makes sense. But this is a really cool idea to me, being able to expand my circle of influence. And I'm going to think on this today and then get back to you guys tomorrow on how I did in applying it. So, sounds good, guys. Thank you for hopping on this. Appreciate it. And say these things. Or, lol. Yeah, guys, have a good day. Appreciate it.